The U.S. Navy base in Norfolk buzzed with energy. Sailors lined the shores. Officers double-checked drills, and reporters gathered in anticipation. President Donald Trump was scheduled to witness a rare Navy training exercise, the kind conducted only once a year. But this wasn't a publicity stunt, it was personal. Trump arrived not with fanfare or speeches, but with quiet presence. Dressed in a Navy windbreaker, he greeted commanders with respect and took his place on the observation deck. Yet his eyes weren't focused on the ships. They scanned the faces of young sailors. Among them stood Cadet Aria Morgan, a 22-year-old from Montana, known for her unmatched focus and relentless discipline. Raised by a single mother and a grandfather who served in Vietnam, Aria hadn't joined the Navy for glory. She joined to honor a legacy of quiet courage. As the training began with aircraft launching from carriers, ships moving in coordinated formations, and divers executing high-risk maneuvers, Aria led her team through a critical simulation. Trump watched intently, not flinching even as in Popsu. Explosion rocked the water near the shore. His expression remained solemn but curious. Beside him stood Commander Ray Holloway, a 60-year-old veteran of 3 wars. "She's one of the best we've seen in years," he said, nodding toward Aria. Trump didn't answer right away. Then he asked quietly, "What's her story?" Holloway smiled. "She's got grit, and she never asks for anything." For a moment, Trump's gaze lingered on Aria, her face streaked with mud, her hands trembling slightly as she steadied a fellow cadet. In that moment, he saw something the world was about to discover. This visit was about more than just observing a drill. Something in President Trump's demeanor suggested he wasn't there simply as a commander-in-chief, but as a man with something to prove, or perhaps something to give. Cadet Aria Morgan wiped the sweat from her brow. The training exercise had been intense, but she had performed flawlessly. Her team's timing, coordination, and execution had been nearly perfect. She had no idea, though, that the President of the United States had been watching her every move. After the drill, the cadets gathered for a quick debrief. Commander Holloway praised Aria's unit, but she was lost in thought, her eyes drawn to the American flag flying high over the carrier deck. It reminded her of her grandfather, James Morgan, who died in the Gulf War. His medal still hung in their old wooden home back in Montana. He used to say, "Respect isn't given, it's earned in the silence of duty." As Aria cleaned her gear, a security officer approached. "The President wants to meet you," he said. She froze, stunned. Heart pounding, she followed him. Across the deck, Trump stood by the railing, the wind tousling his hair slightly. As she approached, he turned and his expression softened. "You're Aria Morgan?" "Yes, sir," she replied, standing tall. He met her eyes. "You did something remarkable out there." "Just doing my duty, sir," she answered quietly. Trump nodded. "That's what makes it remarkable." Then, after a pause, he asked, "Was your grandfather James Morgan?" Aria's eyes widened. "Yes, how did you know?" "I met him once, back in '89. He saved a man I knew in Kuwait. He was a hero." Aria blinked, stunned. Trump continued, his voice steady. "Today, I saw the same fire in you. It wasn't just praise, it was recognition, a passing of legacy, from one generation of service to the next. It felt like the beginning of something bigger." Aria had no idea that her brief encounter with the President would soon spark changes that reached far beyond her own life and ripple through the entire base. After the meeting, she returned to her barracks in a daze. Her teammates quickly surrounded her, firing off questions. "What did the President say? Did he give you a medal? Did he shake your hand?" Aria simply smiled, offering few words. How could she explain that the President had remembered her grandfather, that his words had shaken her in a way no drill ever had? Meanwhile, President Trump wasn't finished. Back in the officers' lounge, he requested a private lunch. No press, no cameras, just a handful of Navy leaders and Commander Holloway. As they sat down over simple sandwiches, Trump leaned in and asked, "Tell me the truth, what do these young men and women really need?" The table fell silent for a moment. Then Holloway answered, "Sir, it's not equipment. We have what we need in that department. It's recognition, real, personal recognition. Most of them come from places where no one notices when they leave. They need to know their service matters." Trump nodded slowly. "I saw that in Aria's face today." He sat back, quiet in thought, then said, "What if we did something different? Something that shows every cadet, every soldier, that we see them." The room grew still. "What do you have in mind?" Holloway asked. Trump didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked out the window toward the harbor, where the American flag rippled against the fading sky. That evening, he picked up the phone and made a call to the Secretary of Defense. What he proposed would change everything. It wasn't standard protocol, but it would become one of the most heartfelt gestures any sitting president had ever made toward the Navy, and it would all begin with Aria. The spark had been lit, though no one, not even Aria, could have imagined the fire it would become. That night, unable to sleep, Aria wandered alone to the quiet end of the pier. The moon shimmered across the dark water, and she found herself thinking of her grandfather, wondering what he would say if he could see her now. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind her. It was Commander Holloway. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, stepping beside her. She nodded. "I keep wondering why he singled me out." Holloway looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because sometimes the world needs a reminder that greatness still exists in silence, in service." They stood in companionable silence, watching the waves lap gently against the dock. After a long pause, Holloway added, "You've started something, Aria. I don't know what it is yet, but I can feel it." The next morning, news swept across the base. President Trump was staying an extra day. Instead of returning to D.C., he had requested an unannounced tour of the barracks, the mess hall, and the training grounds. There were no cameras, no press, no grand speeches. Cadets were stunned to see the commander-in-chief shaking hands in the chow line, chatting one-on-one, even joking with engineering teams. He climbed into a simulator, spent 10 minutes observing a drone demo with the aviation unit, and asked pointed questions that revealed he was paying close attention. But when he reached Aria's group, he paused. Looking around at the cadets, he said simply, "This is the future." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by uniforms and humble pride, it was clear something extraordinary had begun. That afternoon, President Trump called a private meeting with Commander Holloway. "I want to do something symbolic but powerful," Trump said. "Something no president has done before." Holloway raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Trump leaned forward. "I want to award one cadet, just one, with the first ever presidential salute to honor. I want it to mean something real, something deep. And I want it to happen during a surprise ceremony." Holloway blinked. "And you want that cadet to be Aria Morgan?" Trump simply nodded. Without revealing full details, he directed his staff to set up a small platform near the base flagpole. A formal event was announced for sunset, and all cadets were ordered to appear in full uniform. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, the base gathered in respectful silence. President Trump took the stage, Commander Holloway standing beside him. "I came here to observe," Trump began, "but I leave here changed." He spoke of unseen bravery, of the quiet honor in service, and the deep value of integrity. Then he called Aria's name. She stepped forward, visibly trembling. Trump reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Cadet Aria Morgan, in honor of your unwavering courage, humility, and service, I present you with the first ever presidential salute to honor." He opened the box to reveal a custom medal shaped like a flame and shield, engraved with the words "Earned in Silence." Then, to everyone's astonishment, President Trump snapped to attention and saluted her. A stunned silence fell over the crowd. Cadets froze, officers blinked, and even cameras hesitated. Never in modern history had a sitting president saluted a cadet, especially not in a public ceremony. Aria stood still for a heartbeat, then slowly returned the salute, tears welling in her eyes. Trump leaned in and whispered, "Your grandfather would be proud." Within hours, the moment went viral. Clips of the salute spread across every major news outlet, and social media erupted with hashtags like #SaluteToAria and #Earned in Silence. Yet while the nation watched in awe, Aria sat quietly in her barracks, the medal resting in her hand, overwhelmed. Commander Holloway entered and asked gently, "You all right?" She looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why me?" Holloway knelt beside her and said softly, "Because sometimes the right person reminds us who we should all strive to be." The next morning, Aria's inbox overflowed with messages, veterans thanking her for honoring quiet service, children saying they now dreamed of joining the Navy, and even a 70-year-old woman who wrote, "You reminded me of my husband who served in Vietnam. Thank you." Among them was a handwritten letter from a 10-year-old girl in rural Iowa. "Dear Aria, I saw you on TV. I want to be brave like you. My dad is in the Navy too. He doesn't get medals, but he's my hero. You are too." Aria wept quietly. The medal had become more than a personal honor. It was a ripple, reaching thousands. Witnessing the impact, President Trump called for a permanent recognition program, the Aria Initiative, honoring unsung military heroes every year. When he offered to fly Aria to Washington, D.C., for interviews, she respectfully declined her. Service, she believed, spoke loudest in silence. "I didn't do it for fame, sir," Aria said quietly. "If we're going to spotlight service, let's spotlight everyone." President Trump paused, then smiled with genuine respect. "You just reminded me why we need people like you now more than ever." He honored her request. There was no press tour, no headlines, just a private video call between Trump, Aria, and her mother, where he personally thanked them both for their service and sacrifice. The moment remained unpublicized, untouched by media, a rare and heartfelt exchange between a president and a family who had quietly given so much. A week later, Aria received an unexpected letter, an official invitation from the U.S. Naval Academy. They were offering her a position as a junior leadership instructor, nearly unheard of for someone still in training. "You've become a symbol of leadership," the message read, "and we need future leaders to learn from the real ones." Aria was torn. She loved active field training, but her grandfather's words echoed in her heart. "When you're given a chance to shape others, you do it." She accepted. With that, Aria Morgan became the youngest instructor in Naval Academy history. Months passed. One morning, while teaching a class of new cadets about chain of command, a sealed package arrived from the White House. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Aria," it read, "I saw how your story touched lives, but what struck me most was your refusal to shine alone. That takes something rare. You didn't just serve, you reminded the nation what service looks like. Keep leading. The next generation is watching. Donald J. Trump." She framed the letter and hung it above her desk, not for pride, but as a quiet reminder of what one voice, one action, and one act of humility can inspire. Though Aria cherished the letter from President Trump, she kept it tucked away in her drawer close to her heart, just like her grandfather's medal. One quiet afternoon, as she wrapped up a leadership lesson at the Naval Academy, she was unexpectedly called to the front gates. An older woman stood waiting. "Are you Aria Morgan?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Aria replied politely. "I'm Sarah Holloway Ray's wife." Aria's heart leapt. Commander Holloway had recently retired. "He speaks of you often," Sarah said with a warm smile. "He wanted me to give you this." She handed Aria a worn leather journal. Inside were Holloway's handwritten reflections, decades of wisdom, lessons on leadership, and thoughts forged through years of service. At the very end, one final entry was addressed to her. You are the future. Never doubt your place. Aria clutched the journal, overcome. Thank you, she whispered. Later that year, Aria was invited to speak at a Navy graduation ceremony. Nervous, she rewrote her speech several times, but when she stood at the podium, she set the paper aside. I was given a medal, she began, but I didn't earn it alone. She spoke of humility, silent courage, and the power of teamwork. Then she said, if you're ever wondering whether what you do matters, remember this: somewhere, someone is safer because you chose to serve. Her words rang through every corner of the hall. As she stepped down, the cadets rose in thunderous applause. A few weeks later, Aria returned to Montana for a short visit. Sitting beside her mother on the porch, they watched the sun dip behind the hills, her grandfather's old flag gently waving in the breeze. Do you think Grandpa would be proud? Aria asked softly. Her mother smiled. He'd tell you to stop asking and keep doing what's right. Aria laughed gently, then stepped inside and opened her grandfather's old chest. Inside were faded service photos, worn dog tags, and a single yellowed note that read, True strength is quiet. She closed the lid slowly and whispered, I understand now. Before leaving office, President Trump made one final move. He signed an executive order establishing a National Day of Silent Service, honoring military personnel whose quiet dedication shapes history. He chose the date of his meeting with Aria as the official day. She was invited to the signing ceremony, but humbly chose to attend virtually standing beside her students at the academy to show them that no honor is too great to be shared. After class, one of her newest students, Lily Tran, approached nervously. Ma'am, you're the one with the medal, right? Aria smiled. I am, but that doesn't make me different. Lily hesitated, then said softly, I want to be like you. Aria met her gaze and replied, Don't be me. Be better. In that quiet moment, Aria understood. Her legacy wasn't the medal, the speech, or even the salute. It was the seeds she planted, inspired voices rising around her. Years later, she received an unexpected call. Aria, said a warm, familiar voice, it's Donald. I wanted to tell you something. He shared that a new cadet's mother had written to him. Her daughter had enlisted because of Aria's story. She said, Trump added, his voice quiet, your courage gave her daughter the reason to believe she could serve too. My daughter didn't want fame, she wanted to matter quietly. As those words echoed in her ears, Aria felt tears gather. Thank you, Trump said sincerely, for what you did and what you keep doing. Years passed, but Aria remained grounded in purpose. One morning, she noticed a cadet sitting alone, weighed down by something unspoken. She pulled him aside and asked gently, Do you know why silence matters? The cadet shook his head. Because it makes your actions louder, she said. He nodded slowly, the words sinking in. Aria didn't know then that phrase would one day be etched in stone. 5 years later, a monument was unveiled at the Naval Academy, a bronze sculpture of a cadet in salute, with the inscription, Earned in Silence, inspired by Cadet Aria Morgan. President Trump returned for the ceremony, not with cameras, but quietly, as he had promised. As the crowd applauded, he stood beside Aria and whispered, This is your salute to the future. That evening, Aria stood alone at the edge of the same pier where it all began, older now, wiser, her heart still steady. A young cadet passed by and offered her a crisp salute. Aria returned it, just as she once had to the president. In that quiet moment, she understood more deeply than ever. It was never about medals, speeches, or headlines. It was about legacy. And hers was only just beginning.